The largest storm we've seen so far this year is quickly coming this way, and in this video, we're going to be breaking down everything that you need to know about it, everywhere from the tornado outbreak all the way over to the winter storm that this will be bringing into sections of the Midwest. So let's go ahead and get right into it, starting off by looking at the Storm Prediction Center outlook for the next several days. As we can see, we've got no real risk of severe weather today across the country, but as we move into tomorrow, we are going to have a little bit of a precursor to our big-time severe weather outbreak this weekend, with a slight risk of severe weather now in place for sections of the Arklatex region here. Now, this is mainly driven by a wind and hail threat. We actually have a 15% hatched risk of hail for sections of the Arklatex area. However, I wouldn't be surprised to see a brief tornado in certain conditions, and we're going to break down what those conditions are later in this video. Now, moving on to Thursday, we're going to have a marginal risk of severe weather across sections of Dixie Alley, kind of the remnants of our mini trough here in the jet stream that's bringing our severe weather event to the Arklatex region. But we're going to break that down more in a later forecast. So as we dive into Friday here again, we've got ourselves an enhanced risk of severe weather. This has been an enhanced risk for a couple of days now, and usually whenever we see an enhanced risk this far out, some big stuff is about to go down, right? So that enhanced risk now extending from sections of central Illinois all the way back down into areas like southeastern Arkansas and northwest Mississippi. And then on Saturday here, obviously, we've got ourselves another enhanced risk of severe weather across sections of Dixie Alley, with the slight risk extending all the way from Lake Erie back into the Gulf of Mexico, which is extremely rare. And all in all here, it looks like Saturday is going to have a severe weather threat for 50 million all the way up to 100 million people. So we've got to be on the lookout here. Now, we do have a brand new outlook here. This is Sunday's outlook. We have a slight risk of severe weather now for sections of the East Coast, but if I had to guess, I'd mainly say that this is going to be a big-time windbag with maybe a couple of weak to moderately strength tornadoes down to sections of the Carolinas and Georgia, but we'll see. We definitely could see some upgrades to this, so make sure to stay tuned to the channel so you'll know if that happens. Now, as we mentioned, we are going to have a significant tornado threat with this storm. But the SPC is already saying 4 to 5 days out that all severe thunderstorm hazards are expected, not possible, expected, including widespread damaging winds, tornadoes, some strong, and large hail. Now, the Storm Prediction Center usually does not mention strong tornadoes this far out unless we are expecting a very potent setup. So this is not a good sign for what's to come. Now, taking a look at the dew points for these events here, kind of what moisture content we've got in portions of the Dixie Alley region, and then back into sections of the Midwest, we can see that, again, this little mini trough here is going to have that threat for severe weather down in the Arklatex region, maybe bringing those dew points around 60 degrees, and then maybe some low to mid-60s along the Gulf Coast. However, down there, shear will not be nearly adequate enough for severe weather, but we definitely could see some of that severe weather lingering into sections of Dixie once again there on Thursday, and then Friday here, our big-time severe weather event really gets started, and we're expecting dew points to be anywhere from the high 60s all the way up to the low 70s potentially in sections of the Gulf Coast here, even getting back up into the 50s and the 60s for sections of the Ohio Valley. So again, a very potent setup with a high moisture content. So that is really one of the bigger things that we have to watch out for with this system. Now, here are the surface-based capes and wind crossovers with the next couple events. Again, here is our little mini event that we're expecting to unfold across the next couple of days. There's a chance that we do go live for this. Again, I really do believe that there's a conditional tornado threat in place, especially for sections like northeast Texas, so we'll see what ends up happening. But after that, we can see that we've really got a good amount of cape there mixing over with all that nice lower level shear into sections of Louisiana and Mississippi for our Friday-Saturday event, and that really explodes as we go into Saturday night, so we'll see what happens. But for now, let's go ahead and take a look at the HRRR model for our Texas event. So this is a northeast Texas sounding taken from hour 32. As I said, I would not be surprised to see a conditional tornado threat in this region if we were to see discrete supercells, which we'll break down later, but it looks like we definitely could. As we can see, we've got ourselves a pretty messy looking photograph. However, we've definitely got enough SRH to fuel some tornadoes. We've got 300 all the way up to 400 SRH, depending on what layer of the atmosphere you look at. We've got 55 knots of effective layer shear, 64 3 cape, and we've got really good lapse rates actually, 7.5 all the way up to 8 there, again, depending on what level of the atmosphere you look at. The effective layer STP is sitting at about a 3, which for a low-end tornado event is definitely quite significant. So honestly, I would not be surprised surprised to see an upgrade to a 5% tornado risk, at least for sections of Texas and Arkansas. Again, all hazards of severe weather definitely look possible, so there's a good chance that we will have a stream out for this system. So, moving on to our big time event, I just pulled this sounding here from southeastern Mississippi, and I'm not going to lie, this is likely the most concerning sounding for a tornado threat that I have seen, that I've personally pulled anyway, of all time. I mean, just look at this, guys. We've got a 77-degree turn storm slinky. That is textbook. An unbelievably crazy photograph there showing a lot of instability. We've got ourselves an effective layer STP at 7, the PDS tornado threat on possible hazard type, which if you don't know basically means strong tornado threat. We've got ourselves 61 knots of effective layer shear, but in the cloud layer we've got 85 knots, and in some areas that's even higher, but we've got 73 3 cape in this environment. Lapse rates are pretty good, and we've got a significant drop off in dew points the higher you go into the atmosphere, so that is definitely going to produce a somewhat sneaky hail threat there as well, I think. But again, significant tornadoes cannot be ruled out in an environment like this depending on storm mode, which we are going to break down a little bit more later. Now, there are two modes to this system. Once again, there's our southern mode that we just looked at, and then there's our northern mode. Now, this was a sounding taken from sections of southwest Iowa, and I will say our storm mode to the north definitely does not look nearly as potent as our southern mode. However, I still wouldn't rule out a brief tornado somewhere in the sections of the Midwest. We have 182 3 cape in this environment, lapse rates at 8 Celsius per kilometer, which is pretty crazy. However, you'll notice there are definitely some flaws with this setup. In the cloud layer, we only have 9 knots of shear, and we've got less than 200 SRH, so definitely not going to be any sort of crazy potent severe weather setup here. We also don't have nearly enough moisture content for a full-scale tornado outbreak, dew points being in the low to mid-50s for most of the Midwest. But again, I would not be surprised to see a brief tornado or two back up into the Midwest for this event. Now, moving on to the RGEM model here, we can see that for our event that's going to be unfolding across sections of the Arklatex region over the next couple of days, as we go into kind of Wednesday night into Thursday here, I guess Thursday night into Friday, I should say, a severe weather threat will definitely be recognizable across sections of Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Alabama. However, storm coverage is definitely going to be quite a significant problem. Not everybody in these areas is actually going to end up seeing severe weather. It is just going to be those areas that get hit by those little supercells that we're expecting to develop that could have some problems. But again, I would not rule out an isolated tornado or two in this environment, right? So after that, we are going to be dealing with our massive low pressure system developing across the Central Plains there, bringing some thunderstorms to sections of Kansas and Missouri, and eventually bringing a massive squall line of storms to sections of Illinois here. So this, as of right now, has been something that a lot of the models have been very consistent on. The GFS, the RGEM, the European, they all like the idea of a massive MCS and potentially even a low-end derecho impacting sections of the Midwestern United States. So that is definitely something we're going to have to look out for. Now, unfortunately, the RGEM model is not quite go into Saturday's event yet, which again will be our bigger threat for a massive tornado outbreak, I would say. But again, a big-time damaging wind threat is definitely going to be in place for sections of the Midwest and the Ohio Valley, so please do be on the lookout. Now, if we take a look at the GFS here, we can see not only is this system bringing us a severe weather threat, but as we mentioned in the intro, definitely a big-time winter storm threat as well. As we can see, sections of the upper western Midwest are going to be getting a heavy helping of snow. Again, those extremely strong winds as well associated with this low-pressure system are definitely going to allow for some blizzard conditions at times as well. So you got to be on the lookout for that there, guys. If we take a look at total snow accumulations from this event, as of right now, the GFS is saying around a foot of snow is going to be possible for the localized regions of North Dakota and Minnesota that get the heaviest snow totals, but I definitely think that a trace of snow is going to be likely here all across sections of eastern South Dakota and pretty much the entire state of Minnesota, honestly. So the Canadian model actually does have a little bit of a different view for this winter storm. It's saying that it's going to have a big-time ice threat associated with it as well, so that would honestly be more hazardous than anything because that is obviously going to significantly impact travel conditions, and then it also has more snow for areas like the Midwest and even sections of the Ohio Valley, so definitely a little bit further south of a system. And if things were to play out like this, the snow totals would look way different, with the heaviest totals being over sections of Iowa there, maxing out at about 15 to 16 inches of accumulation in localized regions. But again, we are very far out, so take that specific area with a grain of salt. That is not going to be the area likely that sees the highest totals in particular, but definitely a good swath of snow, anywhere from a half foot all the way up to a foot or higher in sections of Iowa, Nebraska, and South Dakota going to be possible. And then again, a trace anywhere anywhere up to 2 inches of snow for sections of the Ohio Valley and the Midwest, and then maybe a few inches of accumulation back into areas like Wisconsin and even the UP of Michigan. So finally, before we end off this video, I want to take a look at the current watches, warnings, and advisories across the country, because there are a few things to note here. We have a ton of those hot pink colored boxes across sections of Texas and New Mexico. Those are your red flag warnings. Over the past several days, we have had wildfires ripping across sections of southern Texas, and those conditions are only going to continue as we go into this weekend, as that low pressure system brings more winds, and these areas, unfortunately, are not going to end up seeing too much snow or rain accumulation, obviously, from these systems, so things are going to remain dry, and we are definitely going to be talking about that threat for some more wildfires sparking out in this region. We do have some of those tan shaded boxes back into parts of Appalachia, and those are basically the same thing. They mention the threat for a wildfire danger, but not quite as significant as what we're dealing with in Texas and New Mexico. But that's about it. So before we end off this video, I'd like to thank all of our channel members. If you guys would like to become a channel member, make sure to do so by clicking the link down in the description. You get access to early content as well as exclusive forecasts and community posts. So again, if you are interested in that kind of stuff, make sure to become a member. But yeah, that's all I've got for you guys today. So if you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Stay safe.